அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி தானி பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி 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 தானி பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி 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 தானி பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி.
Let me thank the organizers for organizing this session and giving me an opportunity to share some of my thoughts on money or precious gemstone, mantra or invocation, and marundu or medicine in Agaval. I want to start by acknowledging the victims of COVID-19 around the world, and particularly in the United States and India. U.S. COVID-19 casualties have now exceeded 700,000. You may also know that most of the deaths are occurring in places where there's very low levels of immunization or vaccination. As far as India is concerned, you may know that the second wave of COVID-19 in India has claimed a couple of million, at least 2 to 3 million deaths, a couple of million, 2 to 3 million lives, that is, and deaths. According to the Center for Global Development, that's the Washington Research Institute, and their research study is based on state data, international estimates, serological studies, household surveys, and so forth. And they reported that the two deaths, quote, are likely to be in the several millions, not hundreds of thousands as claimed by the government, making this arguably India's worst human tragedy. And one of the authors of this report is actually a former chief economic advisor to the government of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, which is fully accountable for what happened. So let us maintain a silence for a minute or so, and I'm going to play the national anthem of India, sung by Sudha Raghunathan and Uni Krishnan. You know, both are well-known singers based in Chennai. And I also want to point out that you know that in the national anthem, you have expressions such as composed by Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore. You have expressions such as Dawat, the ruler of the minds of all people, dispenser of India's destiny, the saving of all people waits in thy hand, and so forth. And who is thou? For us, that is Arupar-Jodi. So let me see if I can get this YouTube clip. I did these things in a Zoom meeting almost 2 years ago, and I hope I remember some of those things. I do thank Prasanna for his input on how I can do that. So let me play you the national anthem, and we can observe silence for a minute and a half or so.
Jana Gana Mana Adhinayak Jaya He Bharat Bhagya Vidata Punjab Sindh Gujarat Maratha Dravid Utkal Banga Vindhya Himachal Yamuna Ganga Uchchal Jaladhi Taranga Tava Shubha Name Jagi Tava Shubha Ashish
The next point I want to make has to do with the birthday of Wallalar. Well, as you know, he was born the 5th of October, 1823. So there's the number 5, for those of you interested in numerology and number symbolism. So the 5th. And then if you take the year 1823 and you add it, 1 plus 8 gives you 9, 9 plus 2 gives you 11, and 11 plus 3 gives you 14. And in numerology, we again add those two numbers, that is 1 and 4. If you add those, you again get 5. So in Sukkot Amalgam, as you know, there are 5 types of elements or terrestrial and cosmic phenomena, like solids, which is Earth. There's a cosmic aspect, and then there's a terrestrial aspect. The cosmic aspect is solidity, and the terrestrial aspect is man or Earth. Then there is liquid or liquidity. Okay, as I was saying, the date of birth of Wallalar, the 5th of October, and then 1823, giving us 5, and 5 is a very important number in Sudarshan Marga. So I was saying there is solidity, one terrestrial aspect. There is liquidity, which is near or water terrestrial aspect. There's the gaseous factor, which is copper in the terrestrial aspect. And then there is heat or fire, nirupil in the terrestrial aspect. And then there is space, and which is wan or sky in the terrestrial aspect. And you will also know that in Sudarshan Margam there are 5 fundamental powers of consciousness and their corresponding tasks: creation, protection, regulation, which includes destruction. Untitled is part of Agaval. That is, destruction is part of a process of regulation. And then there is Maraital or concealment, and Televisadal or Anugraital, which is revelation. So those are the 5 powers. And these are also the 5 functions of the Arut Shakti or grace power or supreme compassion force of Arut Jodi. Now the 5th function, recall Wallalar's association with number 5, 5th of October, 1823, adding up to 5. The 5th function is Anugraital, Televisadal, which is bestowing grace and revelation. So Wallalar's birth, you know, he was the 5th child. As the 5th child, is really symbolic of this 5th function of Televisadal Anugraital. That is clarification, revelation, and bestowing grace, which is what his entire life mission is all about. Okay? So I thought I would share those thoughts on his birthday and birth order. You know, he was the 5th child. And the significance of number 5 in Sudarshan Marga. Moving on to the topic today, it's on money, precious gemstone, mantra invocation, and Marunda in the Arut Jodi Agaval. And I'm going to just discuss 1 or 2 selected verses on them in the Agaval. The powers of Arut Jodi are described in terms of these 3 central symbols of money, mantra, and Marunda. They're all acknowledged by the Agaval as having certain powers and benefits. And you may know from my previous talks that, you know, when I've said that when we see Wallalar praising something in the Agaval, that's the recommendation. So he is associating Arut Jodi's Arut Shakti and its workings with money, mantra, and Marunda, which means he is basically recommending these things. So in Sudarshan Margam, then we have to take recourse to money, mantra, and Marunda for our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. So I've said also in earlier talks, we are not dealing with some kind of anti-scientific, anti-medicine, faith-healing cult. That's not Sudarshan Margam. Wallalar himself used to prepare herbal medicine for sick people. There are letters which make a reference to that. He also compiled, or in the process of compiling, he was in the process of compiling catalog of herbs and their beneficial effects. And so we embrace medicine. anything that has basis in evidence for healing or prevention or alleviation of disease. And I want to add in this context that so we embrace vaccines because vaccines, at least the ones that are being tested and approved, uh, 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 prevent or help in preventing. You know, they're not 100% guaranteed, but they play an important role in defending the body against viruses and so forth. So we should embrace the COVID-19 vaccines that have been approved. India is actually in a very risky situation given its low level of vaccination. And, these scientists, medical scientists, have warned of a third wave. And if the third wave comes with a different mutant, the second wave, of course, as you know, is because of the Delta variant. So if there's a new variant or the same one, it will again produce a devastating effect and huge scale of loss of life. So those of us who are in a fortunate position to have vaccines, we should do that. And as I said, acceptance of vaccines and other forms of medicine are all part of the rational approach to this environment. So I wanted to play the verses in the Agaval on the money, mantra, and Marundu, but I think I'm going to skip that given the issues that we have faced. But I still need to have one or two YouTube video clip excerpts, very short excerpts played, and I hope I can type the link in the chat and Prasanna and Gopi will be able to play them. Okay, let's move on to the next point about the Agaval itself, because that is my source. It is the final masterpiece of Enlightenment poetry, and it expresses Valalar's mukti or liberation and siddhi or adapture. As you know, it was composed in 1872 in 798 couplets or 1,596 lines. It is really a good fortune that the manuscript of the Agaval, actually a notebook, was preserved and can still be viewed. At least that was the case the last time I was there. I don't know if it's still the case. It still be viewed in the Satya Dharmasala House of Truth Charity in Waterloo. Now, you may know, based on my previous talks, that I maintain that the Agaval, which is, of course, Valalar's last great work, masterpiece of spiritual poetry, it is the final arbiter or judge of any disputes concerning principles, beliefs, values, and practices of Buddhism Margin. What does not agree with the Agaval cannot be a part of Buddhism Margin teaching. So, all kinds of things are attributed. The Upadesa Purtagal, which is really a concoction of all sorts of things. And even its editor has pointed out that there is no information on who compiled it and so on and so forth, or who provided a particular passage alleging it to be Valalar's teaching. We have no idea. So we have to really use the Agaval as the final test of any claims that Valalar's teaching is this or that and so forth. You can't really go by second-hand or third-hand attributions or documents or records and so forth. This is one area where I think very careful research needs to be done. People simply accept that there's something in the Upadesa Purtagal and Valalar must have said that. That is unreasonable, given that, as I pointed out in previous talks, there's all kinds of absurd things in the Upadesa Purtagal. So we have to really return to the Agaval and judge every attribution to Valalar and Sudarshan Margam in terms of whether it agrees with the Agaval or not. Now, as I said, the Agaval is a masterpiece of spiritual poetry or literature. In my view, it must not be treated as a holy scripture to be read or repeated mechanically without any understanding of its literary and spiritual beauty and greatness. In the Agaval, you not only have spiritual insight, but you also have a literary display of the beauty of the Tamil language and Tamil semantics. It has to do with the meanings of words, the nuances, and Tamil poetics or poetic composition. So to appreciate these aspects of the Agaval, one must pay very careful attention to the nuances of the meanings of the words used by Valala. Valala selected certain words. We have to pay very careful attention to what they mean and the nuances and so forth. I'll just point out one example. There is a couple of Vedita, Virgal, and so forth. Something to that effect. And Vedura has been mistranslated as something to do with sweat. It's really a horrible mistranslation and misunderstanding. Where he's saying where, not where, and there is no life that emerges from sweat. Bacteria already exists. Okay, so sweat doesn't generate any bacteria, and it has nothing to do with sweat. Where means root. It has to do with plant life. So he's talking about numerous plant lives, and he's praying that they be protected. And there are other lines in Valala's poetry where he expresses sorrow at the withering away of plants and so forth. So it has to do with plants and has nothing to do with wear-away. So these are some of the things that we have to correct and pay very careful attention to. Again, if Valala has selected certain words, and this is his masterpiece and also masterpiece of spiritual poetry in the world, we have to pay very careful attention to what the words mean, and so forth. We can't just simply imagine that it is this or that, or go away from the meanings of the words, which even a good commentator like Swami Sarvananda does. If you read his commentary on the Agaval, sometimes he pays attention to the words, but often he'll just make some general comments. It's a general commentary, sometimes having nothing to do with the meanings of the words as used by Valala. So that's the kind of discipline we need when we approach this great text of spiritual poetry, the Aruppurinjodi the Agaval. Now, what is the purpose of the Agaval? Now, the Agaval gives Valala's extraordinary testimony using the medium of poetry on the nature of Aruppurinjodi. We know that from Valala's own statements, Aruppurinjodi cannot be experienced or known by any of the faculties of human or suprahuman beings. And it cannot be fully comprehended or described by any of the declarations of the Vedas, Agavas, or other religious scriptures. As Valala put it in his first Vinapam, petition to Aruppurinjodi, quote, எல்லா சக்திகளும் எல்லா சத்தர்களும் எல்லா தலைவர்களும் அறிந்து கொள்வதற்கு மிகவும் அரியதாய் எல்லா தத்துவங்களுக்கும் எல்லா தத்துவிகளுக்கும் அப்பாலாய் விளங்கும் ஓர் சுத்த ஞான வலியம் தனக்கு ஒரு விதத்தாலும் ஒப்புயர்வு சிறிதும் குறிக்கப்படாத தனிப்பெருந்தலைமை அருப்பெருஞ்சோதியராகி விளங்குகிறார். தேவரீரது தனிப்பெருந்தன்மைக்கு மெய்யறிவுகளால் விதிக்கப்பட்ட வேதாகமங்களும் பெருந்தகை வாசகத்தை பெறாது சிறுதகை வாசகங்களை பெற்று திகைப்படுகின்றன என்றால் மலத்தொற்று பூவினும் சிறியமாகிய யாங்கள் திருச்சமூகத்தில் விண்ணப்பிக்கக்கூடிய பெருந்தகை வாசகத்தை எவ்வாறு அறிவோம் என செய்வோம். So, this Aruppurinjodi, even these superhuman beings, Aivaradigal, Devargal, Satisattargal, cannot understand with their faculties or what to say about human beings. So how do we then have some conception of Aruppurinjodi? Because we need a conception, clear conception, in order to pursue the search, to attain, to seek to attain something, you have to have a clear conception of the goal. And our goal is Aruppurinjodi, and the Aruppurinjodi Agaval is Valala's great testimony on the nature of Aruppurinjodi. So when we read Aruppurinjodi carefully, then we can have a clear conception of the nature of Aruppurinjodi. And that can be the basis and the foundation of our search and experience and to realize Aruppurinjodi. So that is really the prime function of the Aruppurinjodi Agaval. Now, moving on, Valala pointed out this is the emphasis on experiencing Aruppurinjodi's Arupsakti and so forth, having glimpses and then full realization. Valala himself discouraged the worship of his personal individual self. He pointed out also that unless you taste the dish, you cannot know its flavor. And if you don't know its flavor, you're not going to desire to have it. And Arupparinjodi is the dish each one of us must seek to experience and taste. And until then, the Arupparinjodi Agaval can function as a guidepost. As well as put it in the Perupadesam. The Perupadesam, as I've said in earlier talks, does contain various remarks that look like they could have been said by Vallalar, but it also has other things that don't quite fit in with Sudarshan Margam teaching. So, as he put it, or as the notes say, he said, தெய்வத்தை தெரிந்து கொள்ளாது இவ்வுலகத்தார் என்னை தெய்வம் என சுற்றுகின்றார்கள். ஐயோ, நம் சகோதரர்கள் தெய்வத்தை தெரிந்து கொள்ளாதனாலே அல்லவா நம்மை சுற்றுகிறார்கள் என்று நான் உள்ளும் புறமும் பரிதாபப்பட்டுக் கொண்டே இருப்பேன். தெய்வத்தை ஏன் தெரிந்து கொள்ளவில்லை என்றால், ஒரு பதார்த்தத்தை அனுபவித்தால் அல்லது அந்த பதார்த்தத்தினுடைய ருசி தெரியாது. ருசி தெரியாத பதார்த்தத்தின் மேல் இச்சை போகாது. அதுபோல் தெய்வத்தை உள்ளபடி அனுபவித்தால் அல்லது தெய்வத்தினிடத்தில் தெரிய மாறாது. அதனால் தெய்வத்தை தெரிந்து கொள்ள வேண்டும் என்கின்ற முக்கிய லட்சியத்தில் இருந்து கொண்டு விசாரணை செய்து கொண்டிருந்தார். Unquote, that தெய்வம், of course, is Arupparinjodi. And as I said, if we want to form some idea, coherent, clear idea of the nature of Arupparinjodi, we have the other one. Okay, moving on to the first aspect, money or gemstone. This is Arupparinjodi Agaval couplet 655. நவமணி முதலிய நலமெல்லாம் தருமொரு சிவமணி எனும் அருட்செல்வமாமணியே. My translation, and I posted translations of these selected couplets in my blog. If you do a search under Thill, Raghu, Thill, and the last name Raghu, you will find the blog. It's called Immortalizing Way of Omnilife, and the Tamil title is Arupparinjodi Peruneri. So I posted translations, and my translation of this couplet is Navamani Mudaliya Nalamallam Tarumuru Silmani and Maru Selvamamani. Treasured divine gem. Treasured divine gem, Selvamamani, of supreme good. Nalamallam Tarum. Supreme good and pure intelligence. Sivamani. Sivam is pure intelligence. It's not Siva of Saiva Puranam. It's pure intelligence, which bestows all the benefits and blessings of the 9 treasured gems, Navamani, Omni Light of Supreme Compassion, or Arupparinjodi, because Arupparinjodi is this supreme gem. And my notes on this, are that the Tamil expression Navamani, the Sanskrit is Navaratnam. At the start of this couplet refers to 9 precious gems celebrated by Tamils. That is Gomeragam or garnet, Neelam or sapphire, Havalam or red coral, Putparagam or topaz, Maragadam or emerald, Manikam or ruby, Muttu or pearl, Vaidurium or cymophane, it's also called cat's eye, and Vairam or diamond. So some of you who are familiar with astrology may know that these gems are associated with different planets, and they can either counteract some bad influence or they can increase some beneficial influence. It depends on your horoscope. But they are regarded as warding off or alleviating certain types of misfortune, adversity, and so forth, and conferring special benefits. But in this couplet, Vallalar, he does acknowledge Navamani Mudaliya Tarun Nalamallam. So he does acknowledge that the gems do have beneficial effects, but then he goes on to say that the Omni Light or Arupparinjodi confers all the benefits or protections of these 9 gems and much more. Okay? So we can take recourse to the gemstones based on the planetary configuration, but I'll also come to a very important issue of whether in Sudarshan Margam there is a particular configuration of gemstone. But I want to just point out that Vallalar is recommending He is acknowledging the benefits of gemstones, but then in Sutta Sanmargam, we have to remember that it's Aruppur Jyoti who ultimately provides all the benefits and much more than him. So we cannot lose sight of that. Now the question is there a gemstone set of Sutta Sanmargam which can serve as a kavasam or talisman and or simply as an aesthetic spiritual symbol? We may just like the gemstones and the way they look. And of course, they have a spiritual significance. So, is there a gemstone set for Sutta Sanmargam? I think so. I don't think this has been explored by any of the commentators in Sutta Sanmargam. I'm just pointing that out as a fact. I think I might be the first one to address it. If somebody addressed it already, let me know. I think the colors of the flag of Sutta Sanmargam give us a clue. As you know, Vallala raised the flag in Sitivalagam, outside Sitivalagam on October 21st, 1873. The flag has yellow at the top and white at the bottom. So we look for a gemstone that's yellow and we look for something that's white, and we can either set them side by side or one on top of the other. And if you set them one on top of the other, it has to be yellow at the top following the flag and white at the bottom. So which gemstone set the Sanmargam Kavacham consists of yellow gemstone and white gemstone set next to each other, or if you do top and bottom, the yellow has to be at the top and white at the bottom. So which gemstone set is this? Well, yellow topaz or yellow sapphire, which is Putparagam. That is actually the gemstone, Putparagam, yellow sapphire is the gemstone of Guru Bhagavan of Jupiter. And in an earlier talk, I pointed out how in astrology, Vedic astrology, Indian astrology, Jupiter is regarded as the most beneficial planet, Guru Bhagavan. But we also have confirmation from astronomy or astrophysics as to how Jupiter protects the Earth from large asteroids or comets. If it were not for Jupiter and its immense gravity sucking in large asteroids and breaking up comets, life on Earth would not exist. So there's a very interesting correspondence between the astrological idea that Guru Bhagavan of Jupiter is a very beneficial planet and this discovery of astronomy, astrophysics as to how Jupiter is really responsible for protecting life on Earth. Otherwise, the asteroids would come crashing in and life on Earth would be terminated completely. So yellow sapphire or yellow topaz, that would work as a gemstone. And then moonstone or pearl. These are white in color and signified by the moon, Chandran. And as you know, many Agaval couplets invoke Madi or moon as a symbol of Aruppur Jyoti's benevolent action, beneficial action. So we have a combination of either yellow topaz or yellow sapphire Putparagam and moonstone, which is less expensive than pearl, and they have to be pure. Can't have some corrupted stone or a hybrid stone. They have to be pure. Then that combination, and as I've said, you can have it side by side, yellow and white, yellow topaz, yellow sapphire, or a moonstone or pearl, or you can have it, one placed on the other. And if you do that, then the yellow has to be on the top, and the white stone has to be the bottom, and either a silver or gold ring would be good. So that's something we have to use in Sutta Sanmargam, and it has both aesthetic and spiritual aspects. If somebody doesn't want to accept about the beneficial effects of money, and the Agaval already says, Navamani Mudaliya Tarum Nalamella. He's already acknowledged they do produce benefits. So if we go by that, then of course our approach is going to be that the gemstone has both the aesthetic or artistic aspect, beautiful combination of yellow and white, and also the spiritual aspect, because it's really reflecting the flag, Sanmargam flag. And you know from my earlier talk, one of my earlier talks, that the yellow is really a symbol of Pursabai, and the white is a symbol of Chitsabai. So every time we look at that ring, we're going to be reminded of that symbolism of the Sutta Sanmargam flag. And of course, as one of the two important gemstones, it's also going to give us the benefit two benefit planets, which is Guru or Jupiter and Moon or Chandra. And some of you who know astrology, they know that the combination of Jupiter and Moon is called Gajakesari Yoga. And it's regarded as one of the best beneficial yogams or combinations in astrology. So the combination of these two gemstones we can trust will produce beneficial effects. And of course, we can never forget that Amylite or Arif Jyoti gives us millionfold more benefits and much more and other benefits. But in any case, that's as far as the use of gemstones or money in Siddha Sanmargam is concerned. And as I've said, it's never been addressed before, but I think it does open an aspect of Siddha Sanmargam. If you're interested in gemstones and their aesthetic and spiritual aspects. Moving on to the next aspect, which is mantra. You may want to read Swami Sivananda's, founder of the Divine Life Society in Rishikesh. He wrote a very good book called Japa Yoga. And it gives useful instructions on the practice of mantra, which you can apply to the practice of the main mantra of Siddha Sanmargam, which is Arupparan Jyoti, Arupparan Jyoti, Kanipparan Karunai, Arupparan Jyoti. Now, in mantra practice, you always have to contemplate the meaning of the words. So, and in this case, be the attributes of Arupparan Jyoti, Arul, Jyoti, Paran Jyoti, and then Kanipparan Karunai, unique compassion. Oh, immense divine light, immense light of supreme compassion. These are all the ideas we can bring to our mind, properties or attributes we can bring to our mind when we do the recitation of the mantra. You may also know that the name and the deity or divinity are inseparable. So Arupparan Jyoti is present in the Arupparan Jyoti mantra. And this presence manifests itself, expresses itself in proportion to our sincerity, purity, concentration, and bhakti or devotion. So we must also keep that in mind. We just mechanically chant it without contemplating the nature of Arupparan Jyoti. It's practically useless. You might as well as simply repeat Coca-Cola and expect some benefit. So you have to, it has to be concentrated. And as I said, if you want more specific instructions and guidelines, you may read Swami Sivananda's Japa Yoga and then apply it to your practice of the Siddha Sanmargam mantra. So the mantra I've selected here is couplet 659. The couplet on mantra. It's called, it says couplet 659, Aindana Ettana Arana Nangana Munduru Marimure Muriyum Mandirame. Aindana Ettana Arana Nangana Munduru Marimure Muriyum Mandirame. Of course, he's addressing Arupparan Jyoti. So the translation, the sacred mantra, which scriptures proclaim in the forms of 5, 8, 6, and 4 syllables, that's Amylite of Supreme Compassion, Arupparan Jyoti. Now, the 5, 4, 8, and 6, we need to have some understanding of that. So the mantra of Siva, in Sutta Sanmargam, Sivam is pure intelligence and goodness. It's pure consciousness. It's an aspect of our attribute of Arupparan Jyoti. But the mantra of Siva in Saivism has 5 syllables. Panchaksharam, Namah Sivaya, Sivaya Namah. And it's a sacred mantra of Tamil Saivism. And let me see, I really need to get this very brief excerpt just for a few seconds. So, okay, now it's starts.
Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya.
So that's the Panchaksharam, and the mantra of Vishnu has 8 syllables. Om Namo Narayanaya, and here is again a short excerpt, just a few seconds.
Om Namo Narayanaya.
we come to the 6 syllables, which is the mantra of Murugan, Saravanabhava. And it's the sacred mantra of Tamil worshippers of Murugan, who was also the patron deity of the classical Tamil poets. And Sangam period, the Tirumurugatapara is a great work of classical Tamil religious poetry devoted to the praise of the deity Murugan. And incidentally, even as a boy, Vallalar composed many beautiful poems and songs on Murugan. He used to visit the Chennai Kandakottam Kandaswamy temple. It was originally built in the 17th century and rebuilt in the 18th century, and he used to sing songs in praise of the presiding deity Murugan. Now, the Shiva, Vishnu, Murugan, and Devi, and so forth, they're all, from the standpoint of Siddha Sanmargam, whatever divine power they symbolize, they're all partial Ekadesa manifestations of Arutparanjyotis, Arutsakti. Of course, there's no such entity as 6 heads and so forth, though you may have some such visions, but they are essentially divine powers that are being represented in that way. So Narayana, Shiva, Murugan, these are all divine powers, but they are partial manifestations of Arutparanjyotis, Arutsakti. So that's the way we have to look at it from the standpoint of Sanmarga. Anytime you pass a Murugan temple, or a Shiva temple or Vishnu temple, think of Arutparanjyoti and think that Vishnu, Shiva, or Murugan are manifestations of aspects of the Arutsakti of Arutparanjyoti. So let's then conclude this segment with this aspect with a wonderful performance of Saravanabhava mantra by Shalini Singh, soprano Anne Reich, and tenor Suraj Santosh. And it's the chamber choir of Europe. And I personally, am impressed that the Saravanabhava mantra has made it to the chamber choir, the vocal group of Europe. Wonderful rendering of Saravanabhava. Yeah, I encourage you to listen to the whole thing. It's very wonderful. And again, back to this point that these are all representations of divine powers. And these powers are different aspects of Arutparanjyoti, Sarutsakti. Now, of course, in Siddha Sanmargam, we don't get caught up in the myths and the stories and the Puranams and so on and so forth. We don't get caught up in those. But the essential thing is to remember these are just divine powers who are different aspects of Arutparanjyoti, Sarutsakti. Now, this couplet says that Arutparanjyoti encompasses all these mantras. Aindana ettana arana nangana mundiru marimuri moriyum mandirame. That mantra that includes all of these mantras is Arutparanjyoti. The next couplet actually says that Arutparanjyoti transcends or goes beyond all of these mantras. So in Arutparanjyoti mantra, Arutparanjyoti, Taniparangarane, Arutparanjyoti, all sacred mantras and powers are included. Because these specific divine powers that are represented as Shiva, Narayana, Vishnu, Murugan, and Devi, and so forth, they're all different aspects of Arutsakti. I didn't, there is also the Bija mantras. The Nangu refers to 4 syllables, and these are Bija mantras of the Devi, Hreem, Kleem, and so on and so forth. And again, there are YouTube clips, and you can look them up. But the Nangu refers to the Bija mantras of the Devi or goddess. It's also another aspect of Arutsakti. And let's not forget that the Agaval also addresses Arutparanjyoti as Sai, as mother. Okay, the last aspect, and I may go over a few minutes because we had some delay at the start. The last aspect is Murugan. So the medicine is that which prevents, cures, alleviates physical, mental, or spiritual disease. Somebody has not muted, I think. Now, the spiritual disease is anavam, maya, and karma. Anavam or egotism, maya or attachment to matter, including attachment to body, and karmam, of course, is karma, the consequences of our actions, good or bad. Now, I've already pointed out Vallalar accepts medicine. That's why he praises Aruppuranjodi as a medicine. Now, as I read that also as a recommendation of medicine, he himself recommended medicines and some prescriptions for health that probably came from Vallalar, say that we have to use medicines. Now, we have to remember that foods, spices, vegetables, herbs, and fruits can also serve as medicines. And again, Vallalar prepared or was in the process of preparing a catalog of herbs and their beneficial effects. So we embrace medicine in Siddha Sanmargam. We don't reject medicine. We don't think everything is cured by itself. So if you want protection again against COVID-19, take vaccines and take some of the other things that I have addressed in earlier talks. So, Udarpiri Anithayam, couplet 661, Udarpiri Anithayam, Uirpiri Anithayam, Marapara Savastharutsuva Marunde. So that talks about the removal of diseases of the body, but also weird, which also means soul, the living being, diseases of life, diseases of the soul are also removed completely by Aruppuranjodi. Celebrated as the medicine here. Medicine of pure intelligence, which certainly averted all ailments of my body and soul, on the light of supreme compassion, Aruppuranjodi. There is one important verse, actually two, that I need to address before I end this talk. Just give me a few more minutes. Couplet 663, Irandavalallam Elvidapuriyum, Sirandavallabamuru Thiruvarun Marunde. Basically means the omnipotent divine medicine, Aruppuranjodi, which raises the dead. Okay? Now we have to pay very careful attention to what the terms Irappu and Maranam mean. And in this context, the Irappu means not only death of the body, there's another meaning of the word Irappu, which means going, passage, passing, departure. Okay? And then Vallalar says, Irandavalallam Elvidapuriyum. He is not talking about bringing the dead bodies back to life. Just think about how many bodies have died, including animal bodies. And we don't see any of these dead bodies get up from the grave and walk around. No, he is talking about bringing back the departed soul. Remember, one of the meanings of Irappu is going, passage, passing on. We say passed on, he passed on. That's the sense of Irappu. That is relevant here. He's saying that the soul that has departed from the body is brought back again into a new body. That means reincarnation, which is affirmed in the Agaval and the Jivagagniya workup. So we should not be going around, talking this really absurd thing. Just imagine how many bodies have died, including animal bodies, and it's just absurd to talk about raising all of them. And again, each of us has had different bodies in different births, right? Just think about it for just a second. We've all had other bodies, as Vallalar affirms in the Jivagagniya Murkam and also in the other one. Which of those bodies is really our body? So, when we talk about raising dead bodies, I've had so many bodies in the previous life. All of those bodies are going to come back? No, that's not possible. That's impossible because the soul is associated only with one body. Okay, so which by all of those bodies are going to be raised is just absurd. And just think of the countless number of the bodies that have died. So Vallalar is not talking about any kind of nonsense like that. He's talking about those who have undergone Irappu, they have passed on, the soul has departed from the body, and of course it is born again in a new body, unless it attains Mukti and Siddhi. And who brings that about? We have no idea how the departed soul comes back again into a new body. Although if you look at the Vinapams, Vallar speaks of the action of Arupar and Jodi and Sati Sattar and Paratva Sati Sattar and so forth. It's about reincarnation. Irandavalalendra means the soul that has departed the body is brought back again by the power, by the Arupsakti of Arupar and Jodi. The other one, and I'll end on this, is the couplet 664, Maranapurumbiri Varavagamidu, Maranapurumbirul Katya Marunde. The divine medicine which showed me the great art of averting the dread disease of death, Arupar and Jodi. Now, one of the meanings of Maranam, this is where we have to pay attention to the nuances of meanings of words. One of the meanings of Maranam is thinking in a dead faint. One of the Panchapana avastai, Panchapana avastai, one of the avastais or states, and the Tamil here says, Panchapana avastayu migu mayakamum ayachiyum undam nilai. So we know that dying involves unconsciousness. Okay, you sink into unconsciousness, your mental faculties are eclipsed, you lose self-awareness. That is the internal experience of dying. And Karana Paranjiral means mental powers to conquer this inner experience of dying. Your body may stop breathing, as all of our bodies are going to stop breathing at some point. But if we practice Siddha Sanmargam and we have done the Japa Yoga of Siddha Sanmargam and so forth, then we may be able to develop the mental power to overcome the inner experience of dying. So your soul, you as the soul or individual consciousness, leave the body without undergoing loss of mental faculties and self-awareness. That's how this should be understood. Okay? Not in terms of putting an end to mortality. You can extend the longevity. You can keep the body in health and maybe even delay aging. But there is no way you can avoid death. And this is connected also with Malala's observation in Jivagamya Vaikam. This is a body made of asutta maya, impure material substances and particles. And he talks about Sutta Degam, which is a body that is made of pure material elements and substances. That Sutta Degam, of course, has Indriyanam, Ilamayodirka, and so forth. And I point out in my comments in my blog that he is referring to that Sutta Degam. He's not referring to this Asutta Degam. This Asutta Degam will die, but if you attain the goal of Siddha Sanmarga, then you have obtained that Sutta Degam, and your consciousness moves into that Sutta Degam, which does not die, which does not age, it's not affected by disease, nothing can destroy it, and so forth. Okay, so all of these things pertain to the Sutta Degam. It doesn't pertain to this physical body, which is born, which is made of impure material elements and substances, and is going to die. A very important qualification for Saga Kalvi is you must overcome fear of death. Okay? If on motivation you're afraid of death and you think that the practice of Sanmargam will prolong the life indefinitely of the physical body, that's just a delusion. And as I said, essential qualification to pursue Saga Kalvi is to first overcome fear of death. Why fear death? You are the Atma. Okay, you had other bodies that have gone in the past, and this body is also going to go. So what is there to fear? What we should fear is the Mummala, Anavam, Maya, and Kanvam, and strive to overcome it, strive to overcome that basic bondage or bandhan, and that's where Siddha Sanmargam and the great work of Arupar and Jodi Agaval shows us the way. So summing up, the Mani, Mantra, and Marunga are all embraced fully in Siddha Sanmargam, and I've already given you an idea of what kind of money can be used in Siddha Sanmargam. Yellow topaz, yellow sapphire, and moonstone or pearl, and the mantra, of course, Arupar and Jodi mantra, which includes all the powers of the other mantras, the Shiva mantra, Narayana, Murugan, and so forth. All of those powers are included in this great Arupar and Jodi mantra. And then the Marunde, of course, Arupar and Jodi is, and the Arup Sakti is the supreme medicine, but certainly we must use all the other limited forms of medicine that the Arup Sakti Parangarani of Arupparanjodi has enabled us to discover or develop, including, as I've been saying, the vaccines. Vaccines usually take decades to develop. And by the grace of Arupparanjodi, we have this vaccine for COVID-19. And it would be really a serious mistake and a tragedy if we don't use it. I'm fully vaccinated. I've actually had 3 shots. And again, I thank Valalar's great wisdom for understanding that we have to use medicines and, of course, rely on Arusakti in the end. Okay? So with these comments, I bring my presentation to an end, and I apologize again for some of the interruptions at the beginning, and I thank both Gopi and Prasanna and others, Rajaya, for helping me out with the YouTube clips. I also a little bit more, but I will